Minister, the first question is, are you slightly concerned about what faces you in Lima next year? This seems to have been a very difficult 2 weeks negotiations. Is there any part of you that regrets your country agreeing to take on these talks?
Look, it is a balance between concern and optimism. Because I think that we can do it. I think that we can bring some innovative way to unblock what it is currently polarized. I think that we should understand this as one process with 3 steps. So everything that we can reach here in Warsaw, it should be recognized as a one step forward to Lima. So I think that we are not going to fail in any of these 3-step process. So we can take what we reach as one step to move. And I think that Lima is going to bring a balance because we are seeking to find that balance between the different topics that are under discussion, and also to try to make an integrative assessment of what is happening to try to bring solutions. The mandate to Lima is to have a draft. Really, the mandate of the Durban platform, it is to have a draft by May of 2015. But our goal, our objective, and our ambition, it is to have the draft by the end of 2014. So for that, we should and we must work very hard, and also finding the formal and informal places of debate to try to create the consensus. We are going to learn a lot, we are learning a lot about what had happened in Cancun, in which the Mexicans succeeded because they visited and they were in all the places they need to work. So we are going to do the same. So we are thinking to launch this process of seeking for consensus in the next Davos meeting that is going to be focused in climate change. But there are many other places, and probably one of the very important places, it is the next September Secretary General Summit in New York. So I'm concerned and optimistic.
In terms of what this summit may come out with, one of the main things people have been saying, I guess, is a roadmap towards Lima and then onwards towards Paris. Do you have any sense about how you would like to see that roadmap shaped next year? Because clearly it's going to be important for you, because you're going to be the man ultimately who has to bring this process together and come to an agreement. So what would you like to see in terms of a roadmap, either in terms of when countries will make pledges, their initial pledges, and also financial pledges?
Look, we hope that as a result of the ADP debate, we can reach 2 important things. One, an annex that outlines a preliminary structure of the agreement, because we think that is a good way to move forward. But secondly, we think that we need to have the commitment, a national commitment, not by the 2015, but 2014, because this is an interesting process, because it is a balance between top-down and bottom-up. So for having that balance, we need that commitment, we need that information. So I hope that we can reach that 2 things. But on the other hand, the September summit, it is a good opportunity to bring what probably we are not still having, that is the political commitment. Because this is a balance also between the political decision and the political ambition of the government through its president and the technical discussion. So what we need in the September summit with the Secretary General Ban Ki-moon is to have all the presidents saying what they are offering. I think that we can take that as an opportunity for having something between September and December. Probably we still need to draw what we are looking in that meantime. So we are working on that, but our roadmap has the September summit as a very important, but also we recognize that there is a formal process. So the 3 ADPs meeting that we're going to have between Warsaw and Lima, it is very important in this roadmap for us.
So just to be clear, so by the time we get to Lima, you would like to see, obviously not, well, not obviously, but perhaps not formal pledges, but at least an idea from every country about what they can deliver in terms of mitigation and, if applicable, finance?
Sure. Probably we are thinking on something that is preliminary, because probably the time frame for having the commitment, it is not enough for having the countries already developed for in this year, but something that show us that there are some numbers, there are some ideas, that there are some bases to draft a text that we can send to Paris for the next year. So I agree that it is probably not possible to have a clear commitment, but some kind of preliminary pledges, some kind of preliminary information to move forward. Because we probably are still on time, but we don't have too much time to deal with this and to reach the agreement that it is the final objective.
In terms of the historical split between developed and developing countries, how do you see that reconciling itself? It seems to crop up in every one of these conferences. There seems to be a very much, some people paint it as very much a black and white split. Others say there's some more grey areas. How do you see that coming together? Because the Durban Platform Agreement was quite clear that any deal would have to be applicable to all parties. So how do you see that coming together?
Let me bring three ideas out of that. The first is that the climate change discussion has brought to us a very different ways of how the blocks, the typical economic blocks, have been organized. So even the Andean community, the Mercosur, the G20 are not the same in this negotiation. So it's interesting because the countries, the parties, now are organized behind their own interests because the vulnerability, because their situation of poverty, because different kind of situations. So here I'm not sure if we can talk about exactly developed and developing countries because there are different kind of interests. Secondly, because we are looking for a balance between this top-down and bottom-up, what we need to recognize is that we still support the idea of the differentiation, but in a different way, because everybody recognizes not only the urgency, but the need of every country to put under the table their own commitments. So I think that having that into consideration, it's interesting that there are no country who reject the idea of putting something over the table. So that is important because we are talking about a very different process that we had in Kyoto, in which it was just a top-down process, in which mostly the developed countries was obligated to reach some target. Now we are living in a different world. After 15 or 17 years, I don't remember exactly, we are looking for something different in which every country of the world has some obligation.
The French team, speaking earlier on, talked a lot about their work with you, and they said that they've been very pleased with the cooperation they'd had between you and the current Polish president in trying to work as a collective, as a trio. What exactly have you been? Have you been working very closely as a team? Can you give us a sense about your discussions, and are you going to be working together closely in the next year? Your
question is political or is technical? No, I'm just kidding. Because sure, we recognize that we should work together, that we should cooperate. For us, there are not ways to move to an agreement in 2015 if we don't have before a draft in Lima. So that is why we need to work closely. But also we should recognize that we are different countries with different economies, with different expectations. So what we're going to do probably later December or early January is having meetings with the French to try to put our strategy over the table and try to find some ways to moving together as it is possible, but recognizing that difference. But I'm completely sure that we need to go together in this process. There are not ways to reaching an agreement if we don't succeed successfully in Lima before.
You mentioned the Mexican presidency in Cancun. I think it was Minister Espinosa who was in charge there, and as you say, people said she did a lot of traveling and went to meet a lot of different countries. Is that something you're planning? Can you give us a sense about how you are planning to reach out to different countries? Are there going to be a series of scheduled meetings next year where you go and speak to the USA, China, EU?
Look, we recognize what Mexico did, but we should recognize that there are some differences. What happened in Cancun, it was the recovery of a process after Copenhagen. What will happen now or in the future is that we are giving or bringing a new life, a new document, a new protocol, a new legal instrument. So probably that makes the difference between the process. But also we recognize that the Mexicans did well in bringing everybody together to the table. So sure, it is our idea not only to try to be in the different places in which we can debate this, but also to visit the different countries, visit the different members, and probably our first challenge is trying to bring a Latin American position to the table. It is not easy. As you know, Latin America is currently living in a very big economic development debate, but we think that bringing together ILAC, ALBA, and the different economic blocks, we can do something. And based on that, we can move to the other countries to do the same. So that is our idea, is trying to be in as much as possible places to discuss and to look for the consensus of the different countries.
Some of the Latin American countries have, in the past and at this conference, been accused of slowing the talks. Venezuela always seems to be at the top of that list, and the ALBA bloc. How can you, what role will Peru have in the talks next year? Do you have to stand back from sort of pushing your national position? And how do you see the ALBA position developing? Because it seems at some points to be quite hard line.
Yeah, look, Venezuela is going to organize the pre-COP. This is an interesting process because the COP will be in Lima, then pre-COP in Caracas, I think 2 months before. And I think that we can take Caracas or Venezuela as an opportunity, because what Venezuela is thinking is to broaden the civil society participation, include the indigenous people voices, the civil society voice. And I think that that will be, or that could be, a good opportunity to hear that voices, to try to find a consensus, and also to alleviate the pressure. So we are going to co-share, because it is used to having the share of the next COP, co-sharing the pre-COP if it's in a different country. So we should find a way to do it together. So I think that if we recognize that Caracas could be a good opportunity, we after that can move forward to an agreement in this, to a draft agreement, in December, with a successful COP in Lima.
You mentioned the social COP, and Claudia Salerno was speaking this morning, and she said it was important to re-engage with civil society. How are you going to do that? Because there are lots of very angry people outside this conference now. They're saying that this has been taken over by the fossil fuel industry. They're saying that they feel disenfranchised. So what are you going to do in the next year to try and rebuild that trust?
I think that the feeling of the civil society, it is in some way related to what we are seeing, that it is, we are in the same process that we had been in the past. So to bring civil society and to make civil society feel more comfortable, we should bring here a more innovative way for discussion. We are working on that, but I'm sure that we can do it. My expertise, it is because before being minister, I was the executive director of an NGO in Lima. So I had more than around 20 years of experience working with civil society groups. And I hope I can bring my experience working with that, with all the Peruvian team and with all the other countries that are supporting Peru, to bring the civil society to the table, to make a more confidence atmosphere to reach something.
Do you think they have a point about the level of sponsorship by coal companies at this conference, and the fact there was a coal and climate summit on the sidelines? Is that something Peru is planning to copy in a year's time?
No, we are not planning that. What we want is to be, or to raise the funds that we need from the public sector, the public treasury, but also we have already talked with the international cooperation to ask for some support. We have not talked with corporation. We don't have a final position on that. But what I want to say very clear is that we are not going to do something that is too sensible to the people. Because if we want to create confidence, we need to be very careful on how we are moving forward. So I'm sure that we are not going to do what we should not do.